Hello guys, it's me for Like the Law Guy coming back with another video delving into the depths of Riot's universe. Today we're going to be talking about the entire main storyline of League of Legends with all the crucial events that has occurred since the beginning of time. Because this comes straight from the book Realms of Runeterra, which I highly recommend anyone who has an invested interest in the lore behind League of Legends to acquire, I'm going to be reading it straight from the book to make it as natural as possible, so if you hear any paper flicking, just know it's because of that. So let's get straight into this. As I said in my last video, Noxus is the most crucial society in Runeterra, as they established a known calendar that most of the continent follows, this day, and so we start with a small paragraph explaining a little bit about them. Timeline of Runeterra. With territories spread across Runeterra, the Empire of Noxus has united and assimilated countless smaller nations over the course of the centuries. Aside from its obvious military strength and stable central governance, Noxus takes pride in bringing the calendar to every corner of the globe. Indeed, it is difficult to imagine a more pleasant euphemism for martial conquest. But to be Noxian is ascribed to their notion of the world's history, which begins long before the rune wars that gave rise to the Empire. Since many historical records were lost in those dark times, the precise details of anything are likely based on conjecture or popular myth. And now we get to our first recorded date, which is the year -9000 before Noxus's establishment. The First Lands. Across the island and continent now known as Ionia, a great war raged between mortals and a race of sky giants. Only by the intervention of the Vashtai Array, legendary beings of immense power, existing in both the material and spirit realms simultaneously, was victory eventually won. To quickly go over the Vashtai Array, they are a race of ancient mortals that took power from the spiritual realm to become shape-changing wielders of power. These individuals are the ancient descendants of the now known Vashtai race. This small paragraph references a long battle ago between giants and the Vashtai Array, and there are some sites around Ionia that still depict these battles to this day. However, no known person alive knows exactly what happened back then. The Ionians leave these places intact as places to show Ionia's history. The next crucial event didn't come till a millennia later, at -8000 before Noxus' establishment, where the War of the Three Sisters, Avarosa, Serilda, and Lysandra occurred. War of the Three Sisters. After they defeated the old gods to the north, a feud developed between the sisters Avarosa, Serilda, and Lysandra, and quickly escaped into open conflict. The final battle was fought at the gates of Lysandra's citadel, where she sacrificed many allies to entomb her enemies in true ice. This paragraph references the ancient war that split the unified nation of Freljord into three factions: Avarosa, which is led by Ashtoday, the Winter's Claw, which is led by Sejuani, and the Frostguard, which is led by the reawakened Lysandra. The next major event happened 2 millennia later, in the year -6000 before Noxus' establishment, and that was a westward migration. Bringing all their ancient knowledge and wisdom with them, settlers from the gotten lands of the distant east reached the shores of Shurima and Valoran. In time, their descendants would come to rule some of the greatest civilizations Runeterra had ever known. Not much to read into here, apart from settlers from the east, further than the most eastward region of the once Blessed Isles, now Shadow Isles, settled in Shurima first. The next event happened a millennia after that, in the year -5000 before Noxus' establishment, and that was the rise of the God Warriors. Guided by the divine aspect of Targon in preparation for some unknown future war, the ancient Shurimans used a sun disk at Nezarmareth to create the first Ascended. These noble beings were worshipped as living gods, and the empire they forged would endure for millennia. This references the early beginnings of the great empire Shurima, as the aspects of Targon helped create the Ascended warriors of ancient Shurima to fight in a future war. As far as we know, this war has not come yet, which has led many to speculate an invasion of Runeterra is imminent, by the Watchers, who have tried twice now to enter. The Watchers tried once in Freljord at the Frostguard Citadel, and another time at Acacia, which led to the ruined city of Acacia, and the largest void rift which has still not been closed to this day. Speaking of which, the next major event to happen comes in the year -2500 of Noxus' establishment, and that was Acacia rebels against Shurima. In a desperate bid to secede from the tyranny of the Empire, Acacia unleashed the Void in battle. Their own capital city was instantly destroyed, and the land tainted and corrupted beyond all recognition. Even the mighty Ascended host could do little to combat this horror, and Shurima was forced to abandon Acacia for good. This was the major turning point in Shrima's downfall in ancient times and led to numerous catastrophic problems. As a quick note, as I said previously, this rift is still open to this day. Moving along, the next event that happened in the year -2000 was Azir's failed ascension. Denied godhood by a base act of treachery, the last Shriman Emperor Azir was lost, along with the sun disk itself. The people, filled with fear and sorrow, looked to the remaining ascended to protect them. This is a really good story, and one of my favourites to read in the entire universe. However, this video is about the entire storyline, so I will get into this in a later video, but the super TLDR version is Zeref betrayed Azir and absorbed the sun disk's powers, accidentally destroying the sun disk in the process. Moving along, the next event happened at -550 before Noxus's establishment, which was the Great Darkin War. Bereft of purpose, and scarred by what they had endured in facing the Void, many of the Ascended became twisted in body and mind, naming themselves Darking, and raising hordes of mortal warriors to conquer the world. Eventually, the aspects who had inspired their creation were forced to intervene, imprisoning the Darkin within their own accursed weapons. This references the Ascended hosts that fought against the Acathian Void Rift slowly going mad with no leadership. We know of at least 2 Darkin right now, and they are Aatrox and Varus. Kain doesn't technically count as you transform into Rast in-game, whereas in the lore he's still in Ionia under the tutelage of Zed. The next event comes at the year -400 before Noxus's establishment. Reign of the Iron Revenant. Deceiving the mages who had resurrected him, the warlord Sanuzal was reborn as Mordekaiser and set about conquering the material realm from his immortal bastion. Though it took almost 3 centuries, he was eventually defeated by an alliance of the Noxai tribes who inherited the empire he had built. Mordekaiser alone has one of the most crucial stories in all the universe, as its world-building material is unparalleled. His downfall led the Noxai tribes to form Noxus in the near future. However, before Noxus formed, 2 more major events happened, one of which was in the year -25 before Noxus, which was the Ruined Nation. A terrible accident occurred in the arcane vaults beneath the city of Helia, hidden away on the Blessed Isles. With the barrier between the material and spirit realms shattered, the souls of the dead were trapped in eternal torment within the coiling black mist, and the newly dubbed Shadow Isles were abandoned by all right-thinking mortals. This references the city of Helia on the Blessed Isles. The Ruined King accidentally destroyed the capital Helia and surrounding island when his queen died. This had catastrophic consequences as the Blessed Mist, which had healing properties, got swarmed by the damned souls, turning it into the terrifying Black Mist. This Black Mist haunts most of Runeterra, but has a centrifugal point in Bilgewater. 13 years before Noxus's establishment was the Rune Wars. With Helia lost, dangerous magical artifacts soon began to find their way into the wrong hands. On the fields outside Com, the renowned mage Tyrus and his apprentice Rise witnessed the first devastating attack in the Rune Wars, a sight that would haunt Rise's nightmares for the rest of his unnaturally long life. This was another colossal event that happened, and references the Rune Wars in too small a detail to do it any justice. However, I'll be covering that story in the future. And now we get to the year 0, which was Noxus Endures. The Rune Wars escalated across most of the known world. After a decade of almost apocalyptic battle, the last of the Noxai were forced to retreat inside the Immortal Bastion for shelter from the magical fallout. When they finally emerged, the land beyond had been ravaged, but they survived. They were allied as a single people, no longer Noxai, but Noxus, and have marked their calendar from the date ever since. Moving on from this is the year 292 after Noxus formed, which was the Demacian Crown. Far to the west, the nation founded by the great champion Orlon crowned its first king. Originally settled by refugees from the Rune Wars, it was declared that Demacia would be a sanctuary from magic now and forevermore. The year 349 after Noxus formed was Noxus becomes an imperial power. After a series of forced annexations and the fall of Drakengate, the strength of Noxus grew to match this ambition. The noble houses swore, though it might take 1,000 years, to unify all the nations of Runeterra beneath a single banner, and elected a Grand General to lead their war hosts to victory. It was at this moment when Noxus became a terrible threat and started expanding its borders, forevermore becoming known as the Aggressive Expansionist Society. 772 years after Noxus formed was Tragedy on the River Pilt. Merchant clans controlling the trade routes between Valorant and Shurima accelerated construction of vast accessways and conveyors. However, excavations for these sun gates undermined the ancient port of Zorn, plunging whole portions of the city into lightless caverns beneath. This was the moment when Piltover and Zorn split and became two nations with a developed and crude animosity toward one another, with both competing to develop better technologies, Piltover with Hextech and Zorn with the more crude version Chemtech. 787 years after Noxus formed was Bilgewater. With more and more bedraggled fortune seekers washing up on their shores, missionaries from the Bahuru granted these Pelangi outsiders refuge in the southern island bays. While there were many years of cultural confusion, even including the name of the Serpent Isles, this settlement would eventually grow into a bustling port city in its own right. A quick side note here, when they reference the Serpent Isles, it's known by most as the Blue Flame Isles today. However, Serpent Isles is its original name, and the Bahuru priests still use this today. The year 984 after Noxus formed was when the invasion of Ionia. Following many years of scouting and preparation, Grand General Borum Darkwill ordered a large-scale occupation of Ionia by Noxian forces. Though initially met with little resistance, the war host's brutal advance across the provinces soon gave rise to fierce retaliation from various Ionian militias, which became more organised after the infamous Battle of the Placidium. That last part about the Battle of Placidium was a turning point of the invasion in Ionia, as the champion Aurelia showed her people how to fight back during this major battle. The Battle of Placidium has been immortalised in this art piece. And finally, the last date was the year 989 after Noxus formed, which was Jericho Swain seizes Noxus. In spite of his dishonourable discharge from the military, former General Swain enacted a coup within the Noxian capital, deposing and killing Borum Darkwill. In less than a year, Swain had ended the occupation of Ionia, vastly reduced the influence of the noble houses, and established the Triferix Council to govern the empire. To quickly get into that last part about the Triferix Council, it's a council governed by 3 individual persons of a particular set of skills, one of which is Might, which Darius currently holds. The next is Vision, which Jericho Swain himself sits, and the last is Guile, which is a very secretive seat, however LeBlanc currently resides over this one. And that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, guys and girls, and if you like this type of content then subscribe, as I'll be posting every Tuesday and Saturday. Have a wonderful morning, day or evening.